What's the word? What's the word?
All right, another exciting episode. The man is back from his vacation, living the high life. He's decided to join us once again. Steve Swift, this is the Bees of Boxing. And my question to you is this. Do you know who Tom and Jerry are? Do they celebrate Tom and Jerry, the cartoon, over in England?
You surely know that. We love Tom and Jerry over here. It's part of the
Okay.
Americanization of our culture.
Well, I didn't know if there was, if it was like most things American stolen from another much better British version.
Yes, I agree. And we even had Inch High Private Eye in the 70s and all of that. So, Hong Kong Phooey.
Well, I mean, he's not your typical average guy. Listen, Hong Kong Phooey, number one.
Supergon. Yeah.
Right.
I loved Tom and Jerry when I was a child, but we all know somebody who doesn't like Tom and Jerry when referring to boxing, don't we?
Well, this is why I brought it up, because maybe not a lot of people worldwide would get the reference when His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh said, no more of these Tom and Jerry fights. I knew right away what he was talking about because it's a cat and mouse game that he's talking about. And he doesn't want a lot of runners. Here's my first question to you in this. Is he mistaken on what boxing can sometimes be?
Very much so. But before we go there, I thought when he first said no more Tom and Jerry boxing, I thought we had some kind of boxing, illegitimate boxing coming up where you could hit people with frying pans in the face and the frying pan would have the outline of their face in it. That's what I thought, and I was quite excited for a minute. And then I realised that His Excellency doesn't act. Yes, he do. No, I'll change that view. He does understand business. So, the business of boxing and the boxing of boxing are two very different things. And the boxing of boxing is served often very well by Tom and Jerry fights. I mean, calling them Tom and Jerry fights is probably incorrect. What he really means is fights where people don't engage. Now, there are lots of Tom and Jerry fights where people are pursuing each other around the ring because one of them's defensively brilliant. I mean, Bernard Hopkins would come to mind, wouldn't he? So that's not a Tom and Jerry fight because people damn well enjoyed those fights. So did I. He just wants a lack of lack of engagement, and I think that actually is something that's got under his skin because of the last. I could be wrong, but it may well be something that he's replying to after his last large card.
Yeah, I think that you're exactly right there. I think that it's something basically, I mean, I hate to say it, but again, the guy's name is at the top of this list. Devin Haney is the cause for a lot of this craziness. It seems to be surrounding all of this right now, right? And this could very well just be the backlash that he is now going to become, the whipping boy of the situation because of his willingness to engage in the court of law, let's say. And now they're going to make an example out of him with all of these things. And no more fighting like Devin Haney. No more doing this Devin Haney stuff, right? And coming forward, though, I think that you stand a chance of really changing a lot of quote boxers and trying to turn them into quote brawlers. Because, for example, we're going to see it very, very, he's made a point of this statement. There's a fight coming up, right, where on this undercard, and we're talking about your fight coming up in New York, Edgar Berlanga, right, Hamza Shariz. On that undercard, though, is a fight that everybody is talking about, and it's the William Zepeda and Shakur Stevenson fight, because Shakur Stevenson is a very much defensive type of boxer who in his last couple of fights got booed out of his own house. Let's face facts. So this is really, is this a message to boxing, Or is this a message from His Excellency directly to Shakur Stevenson saying, listen, kid, we've got a lot riding on you specifically going forward in this business. Perform.
Yeah, I do. I think that's right. Although I don't think it's just Shakur Stevenson, but yes, it is a CEO of an organization saying, we're not going to do it like this anymore. Here's our new standard. And you used to be our suppliers. We need you to conform to this standard, which is totally different to what you've been doing. Or you need to either shit or get off the pot. Basically, it'll be done this way now. So that he can make those decisions probably isn't very good for boxing. And actually, that he can affect boxers in that way is quite dangerous for those boxers. Because those boxers who do a "fits don't fail me now" stuff, they're not actually running around the ring, are they? They're offering a lot. I mean, some are, and that's risible. And we'll talk about those, and they generally don't get that much work. But the ones who actually have a finely honed defense and defensive capabilities and defensive instincts, then that sometimes does not relate to pay-per-view buys. And you've said many times, Turki Al-Sheikh loves boxing, loves the legacy of boxing, bought the Ring magazine. But now I'm asking you, if you're not interested in defensive fights, because it's all about buys, what's that all about? Do you actually care about boxing, mate? I'm not saying he doesn't, because I think he does, but those two things are incompatible, aren't they?
100%. There's a really easy way to fix that without a lot of people knowing about it. But before you get into that, you asked the question, what is the difference? I think the difference right now is I think the rooster has come home to roost, so to speak. I think that the higher ups have said, we need to get a little bit of return on our investment, especially after the New York fiasco of Outside. And I think that it's put a little bit of pressure onto them. I think they thought they were going to get a lot more out of this TKO boxing. That's not coming to fruition as fast as they thought it should. I think so. So what's happening is that I think that Turki Al-Sheikh, His Excellency, is under a little bit more pressure than we might think. Now you say to yourself, what kind of things can he do? You can talk till you're blue in the face to these fighters and say, we're not going to pay you this kind of money unless you perform this way. Or we're going to say that your pay is going to be this and there's going to be a bonus structure of that. That still doesn't force the people to fight. So what do? You can't like throw in, after the first 3 rounds, throw in a sword. And now like all of a sudden, like this is Captain Kirk and Spock all over again. You know what I mean? You can't do that kind of stuff, but you can do this. You can make the ring smaller. And he's done this before, and fights have done this before too. Because you know as well as I do, a heavyweight fight has a 20 by 20 ring. But sometimes in some of the smaller guys, you get an 18 by 18. Now, what if you bring that down to a 16 by 16 is what you would typically see in like an independent wrestling show, 16 by 16 ring. And now you're putting fighters inside of that. Steve, are we just one step away from getting to this phone booth fighting that you were talking about? Could we see Canelo Alvarez fighting in a phone booth before he's done? What are we talking about here?
If Canelo Alvarez is fighting at all, I want to reverse the charges, to be honest. But the thing is, because I'm not keen, but the thing is, why not just sodding well have one of those things that we saw in Flash Gordon, the movie Flash Gordon, where you're fighting on the floor, spikes come up, and then it starts to tilt, and you're over some kind of pit of grizzly bears.
Sure.
It's ridiculous and nonsense. And I know that in one of the bare knuckle promotions, they have a trigon, don't they, where it is a triangle, so you can't, if you get to one end, you're bound to meet. That doesn't change things, to be honest. Bare knuckle boxing is brutal, and there's very little defense in it, and it doesn't really change things. I don't think this will change things either. And you're quite right, I think. Well, you might not be, I don't know, but the positing of the view, you usually are, and the positing of you weren't right about that rash, though. I mean, the cream didn't touch it, and and it's got pustules on it now. So I may need to talk. Oh, probably not best to talk about that right here. Anyway, you're right. I think that the higher ups may be coming down on him, even if they're not. We are living in a very short tail society. So we want everything now. Phones and social media has done that. You don't get a career like Bob Arum. You don't even get a career like Frank Warren. You don't even get a career like Eddie Hearn now. So you really don't. I mean, look at Shalom and Boxer and all of that. We're still looking at what's going to happen there. But things like this, he needs a return on his investment because it's turbo capitalism. Let's face it. Within the next year or so, put a lot of money into it, and as you say, not really seeing any figures come out, and you wouldn't, would you, from that particular principality? But it may well be that, well, actually, it's not as good as we thought it is it? And so let's look at something else. They've got a lot going on, and this is just a side. I mean, we big it up, but it's actually just a side hustle for them in a way, isn't it? Got a lot of other stuff happening, and this may be the case, but there's no way you're not going to go to boxers and say, you start throwing leather or I won't be happy, Shakur. I'll tell you that, and I'll pull you out after 3 rounds and parade you around the ring and say, this guy's just rubbish, everyone. That's not going to happen.
Not to that extreme, but you do have, I mean, this does have to light a fire under guys like Shakur Stevenson's ass, because we just saw this past week, we just saw Brian Norman Jr. walk into the Lions' den, right, and take out Jin Sasaki like so aggressively that I watched it when it happened in the morning. I was watching it with the sound off because I was already in my office, and I literally said, "Oh my God." When his head bounced off the mat like that, anytime you fall back is bad enough. Anytime your head bounces off the canvas is bad enough. It bounces twice like that, and that is rule. Like you could be done fighting forever. And that's not a knock on Brian Norman Jr. That is actually a testament to how good his skills are. So when you have guys like Shakur Stevenson, these are Brian Norman Jr. guys. These are the guys you got to worry about. Abdullah Mason, these are the young new guys that you've got to worry about coming up and taking your spot. So I can see why it's got to light a fire under a guy who like Shakur Stevenson, who has a name, like a guy like a Boots Ennis, who has a name, but isn't quite that, to put him over the edge. This is just motivation from His Excellency, as far as I see.
It could be, yes. It will be interesting. I think that's a side. It's not a symptom. What's the word I'm looking for? One of those side things. I can't get my head around side things. What a wordsmith I am. It's a side thing that happens. It's a consequence. It's a consequence. Synapses firing.
See, I know you can get it.
I could do it. And I know we had to edit it and come back 3 days later, but, I did it. And it's a consequence of that. I think that it'll be interesting to see what happens with Stevenson and Zepeda. He's not that kind of fighter. To go out and dominate somebody and put him away, he's not that kind of fighter. And again, I'll say, because my whole being, boxing being, cries out with, I love some blood and guts and thunder, and we saw that with the fight that happened last night. I love that. But you know what? I think that a chess match is something I love as well. You can't have it all the time, but sometimes you're going to get it. Plus, one thing it has done is it's brought people together so they can't be messing about. So it can't be, I don't fancy that, unless you're Canelo Alvarez, of course. He seems to have a free pass in this. But, you can't mess about. If you're a Boots Ennis, you can't say, don't fancy that, don't want that, want that. Because Turki Al-Sheikh will tell you what he wants, and it'll be what he decides. I think that you're never going to be sure. You see, the great thing about boxing is that you sometimes expect a match to be superb, and it's superb for a different reason. Someone could melt down. It might not work properly. You never really know what's going to happen in that ring until you get into the ring. And for him to want to control that is just, it's not risible, but it's not going to happen, is it?
No, no. It's like a stern suggestion. It's you know what I mean? I'm just trying to give you some healthy persuasion here, so to speak, right? One thing, and I hate to say it, but we are 1 week away from a fight that I don't think we're going to have to worry about that happening. I don't think we're going to have to worry about there being a lack of engagement. And thankfully, it's a fight that happens before the piece of shit main event. I'm talking about an actual cruiserweight title fight between Gilberto Ramirez and Yunil Dorticos. We're talking about a Mexican fighter with only one loss. His only loss is Dimitri Bivol. That's it. Outside of that, we're talking 47 wins. And get this, Steve, this is the part that cracks me up about this, because I'll ask you this question. Get your head around this for the answer. Mexican fighters, greatest of all times, southpaw. Go. Give me one name. Yeah, because there aren't. There aren't. Southpaw is not a Mexican fighting style. And I think that's why Ramirez is doing as well as he's doing. But now they're throwing him in with a guy who's like, 25 and 1, 25, 2, something like that. A Cuban fighter. And this screams fireworks. This is also cruiserweights. This screams fireworks in a world where we're getting to see the cruiserweights get a little bit more recognition because of a guy like Jake Paul. I hate to fucking say it, but because of a guy like him. We're talking Ramirez, this is a fight where Chris Billum Smith, we had talked about him before being the guy, and now he's got to go to the back of the bus. Now he's got to, and start all over again. I'm really excited about this cruiserweight division right now with what we've seen recently from Jai Opataya. What we know about, Ryan Rozicki being able to come back. Now he's getting cleared. He's starting to spar again. Him coming back. Chris Billum Smith isn't out of the picture, but some of these guys in this cruiserweight division are really stepping up and taking over from where Alexander Usyk stepped out and became an actual heavyweight, right? What do you think about this fight? And then we'll get into the whole Jake Paul thing.
It's a fantastic fight. You're quite right. There will be fireworks. It's great. And one of the great things is that if you've paid money to watch the Jake Paul fight, if you've paid money to watch the Jake Paul fight, he says through gritted teeth, my bank balance. You're looking at this fight, and I don't know how I feel about it, because I know how I feel about the fight, but I don't know how I feel about it. It's not a main event, because you're quite right that Jake Paul has brought this to people's notice, and that's one side of Jake Paul who loves the boxing, and I'm really promoting women's boxing and all of that, and that's fantastic. There's another side of Jake Paul, which is I'm better. I'm as good as Muhammad Ali was, I've seen him say a couple of times. So I'm on top. Yeah, well, it's not real boxing, mate. So, it should be a superb fight. But as you said, it's an opportunity for Jake Paul, should he win. And I've already made my prediction. But should he win in good fashion, because he has to in good fashion, there will be an opportunity for him to become a world champion, I suspect, very soon, because he's been given an awful lot of opportunities to do so. And with WBC saying anybody who's been a former champion can come back to fight the champion, maybe they'll just change things and say anybody who's got more than £1 million in the bank and more than 1 million followers, who changed it, now they can come and fight anybody at any weight class.
I got a hot take for you on this whole Jake Paul Chavez Jr. fight. Because we've seen the fights in the past and the motivation for said fights in the past for Jake Paul's opponents. We've seen it with the MMA fighters that he's fought. We know firsthand why Mike Tyson took that fight. And now Jake Paul is living off of the accolades of, beating Mike Tyson. I mean, at the end of the day, that is a fact that doesn't matter. Are we, because all of us still want nothing more than for Julio Cezar Chavez Jr. to live up to the hype of his name, to live up to the aura of his father's legacy, and smash the living shit out of Jake Paul. As boxing fans and purists, this is what we want. Are we living in a world where Jake Paul has found a junkie with a good last name to take a payday, to put on a half-decent show, and at the end of the day, further this bullshit legacy that Jake Paul is trying to build?
I couldn't possibly agree with that. Obviously, you're just positing a view here. However, there are those many series where someone is being told he used to be a great boxer and now he's being told to take a dive. And actually, when he gets out there and he gets put down, you think you're supposed to take a dive in the third round. Actually, I can win this. It's like Escape to Victory with Michael Caine. Come on, lads, we can win this. It's like that, and so yeah, I'm going to beat the living. What's he doing? He's supposed to be taking a dive. All of that, and he goes on to win. So he loses everything, but he wins everything. Now, do you want to know my feeling about this?
100%.
Okay, I think that Chavez Jr. will turn up. I think he will, but I don't think he'll turn up enough to knock him on his ass. I don't think he will. As much as you and I might want that, I don't think he will. I think it will go to a quite boring end, and I think that there will be a close, maybe majority decision for Jake Paul, and people will then be able to shout and scream and say, including me, and say, bullshit, how terrible that is. And it'll go on for weeks. And I'm asking you, actually, although I'm sure it's not a fix, I just wonder whether that's another thing that happens. It's ideal. Jake Paul gets to win. He gets to be talked about all the time. He gets more followers and likes. Who's this Jake Paul person? He's then a bad guy. And when you look at the interviews, he's really sullen. I mean, he is, he's not kind of Liberace, is he? But, he's really sullen anyway. And he sounds like he's leaning into some kind of villain type situation. So I'm not saying anything has been agreed or predetermined. I would never say that, Tidster, unlike your good self, it seems. But if
I'm not saying it. I'm suggesting that we may live in a world where this could be a possibility. I'm not saying it is.
No, absolutely. Agree with you entirely, of course. And the terrible situation for boxing is that if Jake Paul wins and then becomes a world champion, the two people that he has beaten of any note will be Julio Cezar Chavez Jr. and, not even Tommy Fury. That'll be it. He didn't even beat Tommy Fury. For some reason, I had a thought in my mind that he did. So that'll be it. That will be an extraordinary situation. Even Manny Pacquiao has beaten people in the past. So, who have you beaten to come up here? Well, the car park attendant. Well, done.
Yeah. But I think that this is another reason why we have these kind of Jake Paul cards, because another fight on this card, you're talking about, Floyd Schofield and Tevin Farmer. This is a fight that you could see a young 22-year-old Floyd Schofield really show out, right? You're seeing a fight like this. This is full of it. And starting off, you get to see an MMA fighter come over, do some boxing, right? In one Holly Holm, who's typically has been a kickboxer her whole life. So she's got hands. She knows how to do that. But will it correlate? Will it actually make a difference inside of a boxing ring, right?
But Yes.
he's put together a card. He's put together a very decent card. No doubt about this. This is what Jake Paul is good at, right? So why is everybody why won't he just quit boxing? What is it? Why don't you just go be a promoter? Why do you feel the need to put this is indie wrestling. This is I'm the booker and I'm also the champion because I don't trust anybody else to take my belt home with them. Okay,
Yeah.
this is what this screams to me. Do you think, Steve, that we're going to see a day? Ready for my next hot take on this one? Here's my next hot take. We're going to see a day where, because of this new mandate that His Excellency has, we could see a day where you have a promoter, a group of promoters, young guys with young camps. Maybe one of these promoters just recently lost his TV deal and is looking for a new distributor, for all of this stuff. And you've got another guy who said everybody was the antichrist of boxing. What if we see a day where we're sitting around, we turn on our computers, turn on our TVs, and there's the round table with His Excellency, Ben Shalom, Jake Paul, Dana White, and that's the new face of boxing, because they've talked about how the WBO, the WBA, the WBC, the alphabet soup of boxing is old, antiquated, done, right? Then what? Then what?
Absolutely. And, I would rather have an alphabet soup than one enormous thing in the can that says A, and then you've got to cut it up. I'd rather have a load of little pasta shapes that I can make the word bollocks or something like that. Something similar, because, that's what I like. But I don't just want an enormous A that's about that thick in the. Oh, is that it? Right. I know what I'm getting then, because the bad side of the alphabet soup is that you've got some egregious notions, haven't you? I mean, we've got that at the moment with Manny Pacquiao. That's the one that really grinds my gears right now. And and you're going to get that. You're going to get that. But the good side is that people get opportunities. Okay, we denigrate those opportunities because that's what we are like. We're
Right.
denigration for the nation. So we do all that, and we say, they've only won the promotion's belt. So I'm not going to say any promotions here, but
Sure.
they've only won that version of the belt. But at least you've got opportunity for people. If you piss off His Excellency, Shakur Stevenson might be in a situation where he doesn't turn up against Zepeda. His Excellency said, "Had enough of that, Tom and Jerry. Had enough of it. I prefer Daffy Duck." So maybe he might say, I'm not going to say he's going to say that, but he may say, "No more Tom and Jerry. You're out, son." And then in very quick time, he might take a few years off or a couple of years off because he can't really get the fights he wants. In very quick time, he's out in the cold, along with Devin Haney and Gervonta Davis, and then you destroy all of that top line for those kind of weight classes. And who's to say that shouldn't happen?
And maybe it should. Maybe this is the evolution of the sport. Maybe this is what it needs, because if you look back, there's a lot of old timers that were sitting there, talking about that new age coming up and how they thought it was all bullshit. It happens in every sport. It especially happens in combat sports. We're living in a part now where giant conglomerations are taking over the sport, though. You had, even in mixed martial arts, you had, right, a bunch of smaller companies that were doing it on the regional scene, and then the UFC comes along and they made it so that they were focused as the only one. So I can see where the formula is trying to be built into the world of boxing, because it's really the only one. You've got a bunch of football leagues, right? But there is only one NFL. I mean, American football. You've even got a bunch of European football leagues, but there's only one, La Liga. You've got a bunch of boxing seems to be the one, though, that has never conformed to this structure. And that doesn't sit well with money people. That doesn't sit well with big money people because they don't know how to stay in their frickin' lane. That's just not a thing that they do. So they want to take it over, but they have to be able to try to do that. They've tried to do that. It's not working for them. So now they're going to try to build it with sullen pieces, with broken shards, with the misfit toys, so to speak, right? That everybody was shitting on, because that's the exact opposite. I think that's where we're at.
I think you're right, and your analogy, your football analogy, is correct. If I can just correct it slightly, you're quite
Please.
right that there's loads and loads. There is La Liga and all of that, but they're all under FIFA. So FIFA would say, "Well, we're the overarching. We'll tell you what to do." You're right, and remember though that if we're talking now about, look at all of these promoters who are getting in the way of each other and all of that, I don't actually believe they are. I believe that they actually work together rather well. And remember, a few years ago, I'll say a name that will make your lip curl. Don King had the whole thing. Don King had the whole thing. I see that. You did a very good Clint Eastwood there.
He should have just changed his
So
name from Donkey to Jackass. That's what he should
there
have
you
done.
go. There you go. So we were all kind of, phew. Now we've got some new names here.
Right.
But now
Yeah.
we're getting sick of that, aren't we? So maybe this will be now, and the more things change, the more they stay the same. We know that people are going to say, if this happens, oh, I'm getting sick and tired of that excellency now with, excellency productions or whatever it's going to be called. So I want something else. I'd like a few more. Let's bring the WBC, well, not WBC back, obviously. Well, let's bring some more alphabets back. It will change. It always does. But at the moment, it's, I think, in fairly rude health. I don't think it's the promoters. It's the boxers you've got to get a handle on, because the boxers dictate what these promoters do. Canelo doesn't want to do that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the promoters need to take control a bit more.
I agree. And I think that you're going to see that happen as the money changes. The money has to change for that to happen, right? The problem is that we live in a world where athletes are getting paid more and more and more for doing less and less and less. It seems like, right? Because humanity and health is all come into play. Of course, where a professional athlete needs to make more than a firefighter. Listen, that's a different argument all unto itself. And if that's what you're good at, then you go and you do that. Every world needs to have all of it. I wish I was talented enough to make Canelo Alvarez money doing what Canelo Alvarez does. Don't be a hater. It is what it is. But I think that we're at a crossroads, at a bit of a crux here of a juxtaposition, so to speak, of, is it going to be this or is it going to be that? And I think that over the next couple of weeks, before the end of this summer, we're going to have some answers. And of course, we, along with everybody who was smart enough to listen to this, will go back and say, they were right again.
Yeah, we usually are, and the it usually relies on you making those claims and me going, yes, you're right. So it's easy for me. I'm in the middle of a thunderstorm here, by the way, which is excellent, because big things are coming, and when you get to the crossroads, you got to meet the devil and make that deal. And the devil is in the detail, and there will be something which causes a problem. There always is. No deal is perfect. And we've seen in boxing, with all the personalities you've got, that there will be something that will cause problems, and that will change things, where people say, if only we had all those alphabets back again. So, but you're right, it's going to change, and you'll be proved right again, Tidster, with your prognostic. You're just a little prognosticator, but you must be careful, because you can go blind.
Well, not only go blind, you can get 10 to 15 for it in some countries.
Mm, yeah.
Listen, Steve, we're going to find out this week. We're going to find out this weekend because Anaheim, California, stand up, show up, show us what it's all about, because I'm excited for this card. I'm not excited for the main event, but I am excited for a couple of fights on this card. I'm excited to see how Holly Holm does. I'm excited to see how Floyd Schofield does. And I'm excited to see this co-main event, with two absolutely stellar fighters. If you're listening to this for the first time and you hear us talk about regional boxing and how the skill set, you can go back and watch some of our previous stuff, and how the different areas of the world produce different styles of boxers. If you get a chance to see a Cuban fighter take on a Mexican fighter, by all means, do that every single time. You will not be disappointed. I guarantee it. And I'm not trying to sell shit for Jake Paul. I don't give a damn about if he makes money off of this or not. But I'm telling you, this fight, these dudes are going to deliver. Those two fights that we've talked about, they're going to deliver. We're going to see a world of change coming up. Steve, I look forward to it. I look forward to talking about it. All of you out there, thank you so much for joining again. Another one of these episodes of our stupid asses talking about boxing. If you want to see more of Steve's stupid ass talk about other stuff other than boxing, you can go check it out at World Weary Guy 1. That's World Weary Guy 1 on all of his stuff. Does a lot of stuff about music, does a lot of stuff about movies, does a lot of more other stuff even on the daily tip for boxing and whatnot. And wrestling, professional wrestling. He loves it all. He's a man of many talents, and we're lucky to have him here. Steve, always a pleasure. Always an honor. For those of you, I'll say it to you. I say it to Steve every time. You said it's thunder in there, right, Steve?
It is.
Well, listen, one thing you got to remember, dude, if the world starts cracking around you, all you can do, put those fists up, pull those shoulders tight, and remember, tuck that chin.